Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's time to do our favorite thing, make people mad. We did the last show on how Tennessee's going to win, and then people get mad. And now we're going to do a show on Ohio State, how Ohio State's going to win, and then people will get mad. It's fine. We're used to it at this point. It's fine. And the good thing about doing a show about how each team's going to win is we're guaranteed to be right.
Choose your own adventure, because if we end up being wrong, that's your fault for picking the wrong video. So yes, no matter what happens, we could say we talked about this in one of the shows this week, this exact thing, and boom, did we predict it or what? And we've talked this thing over many different angles, many different ways, looking back at Tennessee games this season. There are four games, and of course, all of the games that we've seen from Ohio State, and applying all of it to where it is applicable. And now, Tom, we want to discuss what Ohio State must do to win this game. And let's start with the Ohio State running game, because that's maybe that may be the one thing that matters and doesn't matter, because if they can do it, boy howdy, congrats on your victory. If they can, which I don't expect them to be able to run the ball that well, they're going to figure other ways out. But if they can win this game with the running game, what do you think that looks like?
Well, that whole conversation has to start up front. And, we just heard from Ryan Day on Wednesday that, these three guys are going to fill the two guard positions. Which one's going to go where? Well, I don't know. Still sorting that out, which is kind of like, oh boy, that is many things. Good for Ohio State. Yeah, it's probably not one of those things. But if they can run the ball, that tells me that the offensive line is playing fine. They don't have to be amazing. They don't have to win the game. They just have to not lose the game on the offensive line. And if they can run the ball, that tells me they're not losing the game on the offensive line. And that's really the surest way for Tennessee to win the game. Like, there are other ways for Tennessee to win the game, but the surest way for Tennessee to win the game is by just whipping the Ohio State offensive line up front. If they can't do that and Ohio State can run the ball, that moves the chance of, like the New York Times election needle thing, like that moves that to 90-something% Ohio State. If Ohio State can run the ball, that narrows Tennessee's path to a possible win by quite a bit. Running the ball, I don't think they're going to just be able to shove the ball between the tackles and just push Tennessee off the line. I'm absolutely not expecting that. I think they're going to have to get creative in the run game. I think you're going to have to involve Will Howard in the run game. I think you're going to have to get into some of the counters and stuff that they've run in the past that they've kind of gotten away from in recent weeks. I think you're going to have to get the wide receivers involved in the run game. I think it's going to be an all hands on deck kind of run game where you're just throwing a bunch of crap at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then once you see something that sticks, you got to stick with it. You got to do it until they stop it. Because I don't think there's going to be, the problem is that there's too many things that are working too well in the run game. Like, you got to find your thing and you got to do it and you got to keep going back to it until they stop it, because I don't think there's going to be too many things that are working too well for Ohio State on the ground.
Probably not. If there are, then congratulations on your 72-0 win. But yeah, like what are the creative things that they're doing? But it can't just be creativity for creativity's sake. You've got to find what your offensive line does best. And they've got the game plan in, but they're still trying to figure out who their offensive line is. And it's like, well, that's kind of a bit backwards. You're supposed to know who you have and then fit your game plan to that. So this might be a thing where there's some testing of the game plan in the game itself, which is certainly concerning, because you don't necessarily know who's going to do best in terms of Luke Montgomery does this better than Austin Searveld. Austin Searveld does this. He does it better when he's at right guard as opposed to left guard. And, then where does Taylor Shabola fit in all of this? He performs better when Austin Searveld's in the game rather than Luke Montgomery. And you've got all of these moving parts and mixing and matching at guard that if that solidifies, and you do see some first down gains where now, okay, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, this is where you can live. This is where you can thrive. You can create an environment from this if you can pick up first downs and just needs to be 4 or 5 yards. That Ryan Day said that on Wednesday. If we get 4 yards on first down, that's an efficient number. That is the goal of pretty much every offensive team, 4 yards on first down if you're running the ball. And then you go from there because that keeps your playbook open. It keeps you on schedule. The more they stay on schedule, then the more the playbook is open. And the more the playbook is open, the more effective the running game becomes. So it's kind of this self-generating thing where, yeah, we could throw the ball here, but what we could also do is run into the light box and run into these 5 and 6 defenders. And if, it's 2nd and 5 and we only get 3, that's fine. Because now you're at 3rd and 2. And again, you can do whatever you want. So staying ahead of the chains with the running game, I think, is huge for Ohio State in this. But it all goes back to figuring out, they need to know, Tom, what Ryan Day said on Wednesday, they've got a good plan of attack, but they also need to know sooner rather than later how effective that attack is. And if it's not effective in the game, okay, you've got to adjust, whether that is adjusting the player or adjusting the play call. You've got to figure that out. You can't wait until let's give it another quarter to see how it goes. I don't know how long you can afford to wait to try to figure something out when, if it's not working, you just have to, I think, assume it's not going to work.
Yeah, if you're not able to, if Tennessee's showing a light box and you're not able to run into it, you gotta, okay, well, yes, the numbers say this is what we should do, but that's not what we're gonna do because you can't do it. Like that's got to be something you see. Hey, it's not working. Maybe you change a personnel, something like that, and try something else. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, now you got to just move on with things. I do think they need to avoid being predictable. They got real run pass at times against Michigan. You can't do that. And you can't do that because it doesn't generally work. It gets you predictable and that puts you in a bad spot. But it also, you want to lose the crowd, run pass on the first drive and go 3 and out. Like you want to have 100,000 people real ticked off at you. That's the way to do it. I think they have to, you want to try running? That's fine. Try running. I would throw the ball on first down and then you try and run it on second down maybe and just try it. I mean, even if it's incomplete on first down, you gotta stay away from run pass. They kind of fell into that trap against Michigan, and that's what bad offenses do. You get predictable. You run twice. It's 3rd and 6. You have to throw, and you want to stay in the whole advantage of getting 4 yards on first down, whether it's a run or just get the ball out to a wide receiver. They can pick up 4 to 6 yards too, but just get the ball out. Get yourself into 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, because then what can you do? Anything you want to do. If it's 2nd and 17, you're probably throwing the ball. If it's 3rd and 9, you're probably throwing the ball. If it's 3rd and 2, you can do whatever you want to do. And that puts the stress on the defense because they can't just say, well, we're going to take away the thing you want to do and make you beat us in a way that that you don't want to. And that is going to be one of the things that I think I'm watching for early is, does Ohio State just do the predictable thing? Does Ohio State stick with something that's not working? Because you can always go back to the run later if you're running and it's not working early. You can't just stick with it and go, well, we just got to keep pounding keep chopping, whatever that's great for Rutgers. You know what Rutgers is not doing? Playing in the college football playoff. So sometimes you gotta stop chopping and you got to do something else.
Start sawing. Enough of the chopping. Start sawing.
You have a chainsaw outside. Throw the ball to the chainsaw.
Exactly. There you go. Throw the ball to the chainsaw. Great title for the show, Tom. The Will Howard being the run game coordinator, they'll put decision-making on his plate, and I do think he will need to be more involved in this one. But in terms of the passing attack for Ohio State with the RPO, Tennessee can dictate what they want to have happen. So generally what happens is you try to stop the run, and then you deal with whatever happens behind you or in front of you because a lot of the passes are short. So then to the Ohio State passing game, you need Will Howard to have one of his best games. And he doesn't need to be outstanding or this doesn't need to be the game of his life. You just need Will Howard to be the Will Howard he has been all season long, save for the last game of the season, the regular season against Michigan. If you get the Oregon Will Howard, I think you're going to be okay. If you get the Penn State Will Howard, you're probably going to be okay. Just depends on where the 1-2 wonky mistakes occur. And, because even against Penn State, his 2 mistakes cost Ohio State 14 points, and they were still able to overcome that. I would not recommend doing that in this one. Although if you can overcome it on the road, maybe you can overcome it at home. Although don't make the fans mad. I'll just say that. But with the Ohio State passing game, to me, it comes down to giving Will Howard time and him making the proper decisions. If he makes good decisions, then again, I feel pretty good about Ohio State's chances, and not just chances, but I feel like even if Ohio State doesn't run, the passing game can get them to victory, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, you said if you get the Oregon performance out of Will Howard, the Oregon performance out of Will Howard was 80% and 9.3 yards per attempt. If they get the Oregon performance out of Will Howard, they are winning the game, period, full stop. That feels like it would take almost an act of God for, if they're completing 80% of their passes at 9.3 yards per attempt, to not win that game. That would take some really remarkable stuff happening, because the Ohio State defense is substantially better than they were against Oregon. And I think the Oregon offense can maybe stress the Ohio State defense in a way that I'm not expecting the Tennessee defense to be able to do quite as effectively. But yeah, you just need consistency. You need consistency and reliability. I think you got to the second half against Michigan, and the coaching staff maybe sort of lost a little bit of faith, or got a little uncomfortable with some of the stuff they were seeing from Will Howard. Some of that probably had to do with, was probably a little banged up at that point. If, he should be healthy now. There's no indication he's not close to 100%. And yeah, you have the skill talent out there, and Tennessee has talent in their secondary, but there's Jermod McCoy, who's their best corner, and he's the one who you kind of go, yeah, absolutely, no, very solid player, no notes. Sometimes you're going to give up completion, that's fine, it happens. Ricky Gibson on the other side, that feels like someone that Ohio State could potentially go after. We've seen Will Brooks got in the secondary as one of the safeties. Andre Turrentine is fine, but statistically not a real big thing. He just kind of is the deep guy, and is not someone who you see making 10, 12 tackles a game. I think his high this season was 4, and he might have only done that once. The secondary's okay. Blue Carter is solid in the slot, and he's fast, but I don't know that he's the most refined corner in the country. And so you're going up against Emeka Ibuka, who's got it pretty refined and pretty high, pretty skilled. This is the area where I think Ohio State has maybe one of its biggest advantage, certainly the biggest advantage on offense, is the wide receivers against the Tennessee secondary. If Will Howard can just get the ball out to those guys, they will probably do the rest. And you're going to see a broken tackle at some point. I mean, we've talked about, the Ohio State defense needing to tackle well. This Tennessee secondary's got to tackle well too, because Tennessee tends to play very aggressively. Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator, tends to want to put those corners on an island, which is great, except if you're on an island and the guy breaks one tackle and gets past you, well, there's not anyone else on that island with you. So then there's a long run or a long swim to the end zone from that island. So that is an area where I think Ohio State could have an advantage. Tennessee's going to have to play its best game in the secondary that it has all season, because this is the best passing attack and the best, certainly, wide receiver group that they've faced all season.
Yeah, and however they want to attack Jeremiah Smith and bracket him, you do that and you try to take that away. But then Cornell Tate has had 20 catches over the past 4 games, averaging about 60 yards a game. So he's been more involved, and he's a guy that can legitimately could take over a game if it comes down to that. But I do think they're going to try to get the ball to Jeremiah Smith. Whatever Tennessee's going to do, they will try to move him around and get him as involved as possible. And we've talked about the receivers running the ball. I think that happens in this one. But with the passing game, use those guys, and we've seen the tight ends be really effective against Tennessee this season. And Georgia's tight ends, I think they had a couple of touchdowns over a bunch of yards. Ohio State's tight ends not necessarily as productive. Say if this was Cade Stover, we'd be telling you watch out. But we have also seen G. Scott recently start to get involved down the seam. He had one maybe it was against Indiana, where it's like 30 yards down the seam or whatever. And it's like, that has been the play that you move to tight end for. And it only took 3 years for them to finally start doing that. And so there's an opportunity for G. Scott, for Will Kazmarek, for Jelani Thurman to be a pass catcher in this one, should they choose to, or they may just decide to keep the tight ends home to help protect Will Howard so that they can use those receivers.
And, I think back the last time we saw any kind of a meaningful catch from Will Kazmarek, down the field catch was against Oregon. And that was the play that he broke his arm on. So they used the tight end effectively against Oregon, that long play to Kazmarek. They also had 3 catches, 46 yards for G. Scott. That was his single biggest game of the season. He had a 34-yarder against Northwestern a couple weeks ago. That was, again, just kind of right down the seam. They hit him down there. So you also have seen a bunch of the tight end kind of leaking out the backside of the formation and, try get everything flowing right and then throw back left. I think they've probably shown that enough that's not going to work anymore. You're going to have to find some other way to use the tight end in the pass game. But you have seen tight ends have success against Tennessee. So I'm sure Ohio State will try something at some point.
The Ohio State run defense comes into this game as one of the nation's best overall defenses, and never making it easy on anybody. They're 7th in the nation in run defense, 96.8 yards per game. They are 5th in yards per carry at 2.85. If they keep Tennessee at those numbers, Ohio State wins. Now, keeping Tennessee at those numbers is a tall order. Dylan Sampson, their running back. I don't know if we've mentioned him in any of the 15 shows we've done in the last 8 days, but he's
twice, maybe
in passing. Oh, by the way, if you haven't heard, Dylan Sampson, I've had this number like 22 for 70. If that is his day, Ohio State wins this game. And the more carries he gets, the better Tennessee's odds go of winning. So if you hold him to like 22 or under, I think you're going to feel pretty good about your chances. It's once it gets above that. So limit his touches as best you can. And if you're controlling the game, they're not going to be able to run it as much. And so, Tom, I'm saying if it happens and he rushes for, this isn't just the psychic in me coming out. I'm seeing 22 for 70. Now that may be a halftime number. I don't know. But if they hold him to that, then I really like Ohio State's chances.
Do you know how many teams have held Dylan Sampson to 70 yards rushing in a game this season?
0.
It is, in fact, 0, yes. And the fewest yards he's gotten in a game was 77 against UTEP 2 games ago, and that was because he only had 11 carries because they won by 1 million. So against like a high-quality opponent, the fewest carries he's had was 19, and that was against Georgia, and that was a loss. 19 carries, 101 yards. You figure your running back averages 5.3 yards per carry, scores a touchdown. You're probably feeling pretty good about that. In this case, they lost by 2 touchdowns. And I think that is a really good way to illustrate one of the points that we've been talking about all week, which is if you can get up on Tennessee and you can make Tennessee one-dimensional, they get very uncomfortable. We've seen Nico Iamaleava in that game was okay, but made some poor choices. And when you get in predictable passing situations, the offensive line for Tennessee, especially at the tackle positions, is not great. And if you can get them in predictable passing situations, you can take advantage of that. And Iamaleava does not always make great decisions against with pressure in his face. So that's going to be one of the big things that, if Ohio State can do that, they feel pretty good about life. If you can hold Dylan Sampson, if Dylan Sampson ends up with fewer than 20 carries, Ohio State's probably feeling real good about life. If Dylan Sampson ends up with 27 carries, that probably tells me this is a 4-quarter game that comes right down to the end. And if he's running that much, they're probably running reasonably well, which means they're probably controlling the clock, which means they're probably in a pretty good shape, a pretty good shot to win. You've got to get him down to the ground. You have to get him down to the ground with the first guy who has a chance to get him down to the ground. You can't let him drag you for another 3 yards. He does, we've talked about this on other shows, but he does all the boring stuff really well, where he turns 3 yards into 5. And it's like, well, it's just 2 more yards. Well, 3 yards into 5 goes from 2nd and 7 to 2nd and 5, and that's off schedule to on schedule. And that keeps things open. That all the little stuff like that makes a difference. Ohio State did a phenomenal job getting Khalil Mullings to the ground every single time first guy pretty much all day long, and then had one broken tackle at the end of the game. And that got Michigan in position to kick the game-winning field goal. The tackling has to be good. The angles have to be good. You just have to be so fundamentally sound. And one of the big stressors in the run game is not just Sampson's good at breaking tackles and good at pushing the pile. It's the way Tennessee splits its wide receivers out so wide, your corners are not in the run fit. Your safeties, if your safeties are out, they're going to be at least a few steps wider out there probably to help kind of cover the wide receivers than they would be normally. They're not necessarily in the run fit in the way that they normally would be. So that just puts a lot of pressure on the Ohio State defensive front six, front seven, whatever it ends up being on any given play, to get Dylan Sampson to the ground and not let him get those extra yards.
Here's the definitive stat for you, Tom. In Tennessee wins, Dylan Sampson has averaged 21.5 carries per game. In their losses, 20.5. So if Ohio State can hold him under 21 carries, they are guaranteed to win. No, but if you take out the non-conference games, the FCS and the lower level, and you just add in the wins against the Power 4 opponents, he's averaging 25.6 carries per game. And in the 2 losses, he's at 20.5. So that gives you an idea. You give that guy 6 more carries in those games. Certainly the Arkansas game may change. So hold him to under 22 or right at 22, something like that, and you feel better about your chances. Unless, of course, he's going for 160 in those, which I wouldn't expect given what Ohio State's defense does. So they slow him down and try to make them less patient, but really they are very patient running the ball. The guy who isn't as patient at times is Nico Iamaleava, the Tennessee quarterback, where they're gonna be running things very, very fast, and they're gonna be doing a bunch of RPOs. And that first or second read, if it's not there, he's gonna look to run, and then while he's running, look to throw. And so if you can, maintain coverage and then maybe force him into, he's gonna want to throw the ball, and can you make a play when he's provided one to you? If you get the ball and it hits you in your hands as a defender, you've screwed up, because he's going to give you an opportunity. You have to make the most of it. So I think, to me, that is, in terms of the passing game, one of the things that Ohio State has to do. When Nico Iamaleava gives them a play, they have to take it, whether that's tackle in the backfield, a sack. When you have an opportunity for a strip sack, knocking it out and making sure that you get it, or anytime you have an opportunity for a turnover, there will be opportunities. There may not be a lot. And if there's only one, you're going to want to come up with it.
Yeah, he is a big play player potentially for both teams right now. And this is probably something he outgrows at some point in his career. And you've sort of seen him mature and develop even through the course of this season as we've been watching games. But there's still the no, I got this. There is a certain amount of hey ma, watch this in his game where, yeah, I've got pressure, but I don't need to throw the ball away. I can fix it. It's okay. My Spicoli, I've got my dad's got a whole set of tools. I can fix it. Sometimes you can fix it, and sometimes you run we talk about the Jeremiah Smith do something cool play for Ohio State. There is a Nico Iamaleava do something cool play in the Tennessee playbook, and they have run it, and it is woo. Watch this. Sometimes he's running 40 yards down the middle of the field, and sometimes he's scrambling to buy time and throwing the ball back across his body, and you're going, no one on earth can make that. How did he make that throw? It's in there. The arm is there. The speed is there. The strength is there. It's all there. But also, the Ohio State defense is going to be there too. And I don't think the wide receivers are going to be able to get quite as open down the field. And even when they do, you talked about the Ohio State defense needing to catch it if the ball's hitting them in the hands. Well, the Tennessee receivers need to as well. There was one of the games we watched, they said Squirrel White leads the SEC in drops right now. And then he dropped another one, I think, later on in that game. It's the Tennessee wide receivers can make plays. They can be impact players, but they're not. Dante Thornton is an explosive player, but also we've seen him drop balls that are just you can't drop that one, my dude. And Squirrel White has dropped a couple. You see that from time to time. It's just not the most consistent wide receiver core we've seen all year. So which game, which big plays is Nico Iamaleava going to make? Is he going to make the one where he scrambles out and buys time and finds someone down the field? And, it's hard to cover someone for 4.5, 5 seconds. And someone probably does break open at some point. Does he extend the play to that long to buy himself time and let the receivers get open and then get the ball to them? Or does he get hit from behind? Does he get strip sacked? Does he get, does he think he can fit the ball into a window and he actually can't? It was either the Alabama game or the Georgia game. I don't remember which one. He threw an interception that was like one of the worst interceptions you've seen, where he's scrambling, trying to extend the play, and then he got hit, but he threw, and it was, the guy was in bracket coverage, and it was one of the easier interceptions you'll see. So
in the end zone,
yeah. Which Nico play is it going to be? He's going to do something amazing, and you're going to, one of the fan bases is going to be pulling their hair out after it. And it's just, which fan base is it? And honestly, there's really no way to know.
Another key for Ohio State is on those scrambles, don't get flagged for grabbing the receivers as they try to run their scramble drills, because
you have anyone specific in mind, Tony? Anyone in particular, or just anyone generally?
In general, in general, back, just in general, back. That's all. Just and making sure that the coverage is there and the grabbing does. Like, this is similar to Michigan. We said you don't need to interfere with Michigan's receivers. Tennessee's receivers are better. I don't think you need to interfere with them to defend them. Your first plan of attack cannot be, I'm going to grab this person and stop them from going forward. Just run with them and see what happens. And if you get beat, as you said, it's not a guarantee they're going to catch the ball. So this is not one of those instances where I would say, if you get beat, don't grab them because they'll drop it and whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, if you do get beat, there's a chance that it will be dropped. And for Ohio State to win this game, maybe there needs to be a couple of drops, and to win it comfortably, for sure. The other aspect of the secondary is the tackling needs to be on point. They're going to be way spread out. The safeties have to tackle. Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, arguably the two best tacklers on the Ohio State team. They're going to be in situations where they are the only line of defense. And, on a slant where a corner gets beaten because, it's really hard to defend a slant for so long against a talented receiver when there's a lot of open area. If that guy gets beat, then it's up to the safety to make sure that slant stops there. And so those two guys have to tackle and make the right plays, make the right reads. Don't get caught up in any kind of offensive pass interference, rubs and things like that. Just play a sound game, make those tackles. And Ryan Day talked about the linebackers have to tackle as well. Yeah, that's of course. But I think once you get beyond that front five, that front six, this comes down to Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom being that last line of defense. And say what you want about the corners, they have to defend, yes, but you're going to give up some catches. Once that happens, those safeties have to be there.
Absolutely. And, good safety play has been really one of the big differences between the games where Tennessee has put up big passing numbers and the ones where Tennessee hasn't put up big passing numbers. Iamaleava had 4 touchdowns against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was playing a true freshman safety who was about as nosy as you ever see a safety be on any kind of play action, any kind of RPO. And it was just show some kind of run action. Safety takes 3 steps up. Wide receiver or tight end runs past him and catches the ball in the end zone. That was about 3 of the 4 touchdowns. And the other one was Dante Thornton just taking a little slant or a little post or something and going 86 yards because, again, got behind the safety. And, it's going to be a big step up in safety play in terms of what Tennessee's facing from Vanderbilt to Ohio State. And this is an area where, why do you bring Caleb Downs into your team? Because of games like this. Why, Lathan Ransom is a veteran guy. Lathan Ransom played in the national championship game against Alabama in 2020 as a true freshman. He was out there. He wasn't a starter, but he was out there playing in that game. He has been at Ohio State for a long time. He has turned into one of the most reliable and underappreciated members of the team. And this is a game where, boy, you need good safety play. We have seen Ohio State teams with bad safety play, and those are teams that had to score 50 points a game to win. The Dwayne Haskins year, they had to throw the ball, and he set all sorts of passing records. Number one, because they couldn't run the ball particularly well, but number two, because their safeties kept giving up 70-yard touchdowns and 80-yard touchdowns and 90-yard touchdowns. This year, Ohio State, number one in the nation. They've given up only 2 plays of 40 yards or longer. Tennessee, tied for number 2 in the country, only 3 plays of 40 yards or longer. So you're probably going to have to be methodical and march down the field. You're probably not going to just be able to hit huge chunk plays and just live and die with long plays all game long. But you need your safety to make sure that the opponent has to be methodical and drive the ball down the field and complete passes and run the ball consistently and be able to keep moving the chains time after time after time. Because this is going to be a tough environment. There's going to be a lot of ways. There's going to be a lot of potential failure points for Tennessee in this game, whether it's the crowd noise, the cold, the Ohio State defense, some of their personnel issues on offense. There's lots of different ways things might not go well for Tennessee on offense. You need to make them take as many plays as possible to give themselves a potential failure before they get to the end zone.
Lathan Ransom, 5 tackles as a true freshman. 4 of those came into postseason in 2020 as he had to be called on late. And there are other things. Yeah, convert into red zone. Yeah, no kidding. When you're down there, turn it into 7 instead of 3. We did not even talk about penalties when we talked about what does Tennessee need to do to win. And it's like, well, don't commit as many penalties. But as we know, it doesn't matter. Ohio State's opponents don't get flagged for penalties. So probably no reason to focus on it there. I would say, in terms of Ohio State not losing this one in one of the paths to victory, no holding, no drive ending plays where, a holding on a first or second down may just doom the drive. And so avoid that. And, we'll see if that happens, but just the self-inflicted stuff, avoid that. And you'll feel pretty good about your chances. They have the talent. They have the resources. Do they have the confidence? Can they get back up off the mat and play like they did against Oregon? Can they do something like that? And it is interesting. Can you play as well as you did against Georgia? Well, you lost that one. Can you play as well as you did against Oregon? Well, you lost that one. But if you play as well as you did in those games, in this one, you'll win. And that's, there's areas there's a there in terms of Ohio State getting the win. I think they are favored by 7.5 or whatever. So I don't have a pick yet, and we'll eventually talk about that. But so there's Ohio State's path to victory. Tom, did you want to add anything else? Anything else?
Yeah, I was just pulling up the national championship odds, the updated odds on the national title, and Ohio State right now plus 500. They're tied with Georgia for the 3rd best odds. Tennessee plus 2,500. So, I know that there have been Tennessee folks in our comments saying, listen, Tennessee's got an advantage in, 7 of the different position groups. And, it's going to be Neyland North. And I mean, if you think they're going to win and they're going to win the national championship, by all means, you have an opportunity to make a tremendous investment in your future if you believe that. But you look at those numbers. Ohio State came into the season as maybe the most talented team in the country. And yeah, they've lost a couple guys in spots where you really can't afford to lose guys, but they're still one of the most talented teams in the country. And the games in Columbus, I'm expecting, I have not figured out a specific score prediction yet, but I'm expecting somewhat low scoring, somewhat close, but Ohio State probably winning.
Well, there you go. So Tom has guaranteed it. Throwing it out there. I was not expecting that. Boy. So there you go. Why not hit the thumbs up now? And if you're a Tennessee fan and you already hit the thumbs up, you cannot take it away. So just hit the bell to be notified. We're going to be dropping more. We're going to be going live, as you guys know. And just subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. And also subscribe to us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. All are welcome. $4.99 for the first month. First month will get you through a whole heck of a lot. And you can check us out there on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, where we'll be talking about this game, the future, the past, the rumblings, the transfer portal, recruiting, all of those good things. So find us there as well. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.